Did you know that over 400 years ago, a small European city changed the way the world does business forever? Amsterdam, with fewer than 30,000 people, embarked on an adventure that would not only make it the richest city in Europe, but also gave birth to what we now call modern capitalism. This is the story of daring merchants, refugees, and visionaries who challenged empires and crossed oceans to create the first global financial market. Get ready to discover how a mix of cleverness, bravery, and luck transformed not just a city, but the entire world. Welcome to Amazing Stories. 4 centuries ago, in the most unexpected corner of Europe, a small city of just 30,000 people was about to change the world's future. Its name, Amsterdam, its ambition, to become the richest city on the continent and give birth to modern capitalism. There was a new energy in the air, a shared belief. Anyone, no matter where they came from, could be part of this economic revolution. Merchants, refugees, visionaries, everyone had a role to play in this story. This is the story of a financial empire that grew against all odds, a place where trade, new ideas, and bravery created not just wealth, but a totally new way of seeing the world. The birth of free market capitalism, the rise of worldwide trade, the first truly international city. In the spring of 1594, 10 men met in the house of a brewer named Martin Spill, near Dam Square. They weren't nobles or soldiers, they were traders of wood, salt, and herring, but they dreamed of spices, pepper, and the amazing treasures of South Asia, which until then the Portuguese had controlled. Their plan was simple and suicidal: to break the Portuguese monopoly and sail to the other side of the world. Amsterdam already had everything it needed: money, shipyards, maps. But what truly set it apart was the fire in its people. Refugees from Antwerp, experienced merchants like Dirk van Os, and men determined to risk everything for a dream no one had dared to pursue before. The story of Amsterdam wasn't forged in calm, but in the midst of fire. Europe was burning in religious wars. The Catholic Philip II of Spain tried to force his faith with iron and blood, while William of Orange, nicknamed William the Silent, led the Protestant rebellion in the northern provinces. The independence of those provinces was a cry for freedom, but also a deadly blow to Antwerp, the commercial jewel of the Spanish Empire and its main source of income. And then Philip II made a fatal mistake. He allowed the merchants of Antwerp to leave with their riches. What followed was a silent but powerful exodus. The most entrepreneurial half of Antwerp, bankers, artisans, experienced merchants, understood something few at the time understood. Capital has no roots. Money can move, and it moved just 200 kilometers north to a small city shrouded in fog among the canals, Amsterdam. The richest bought houses in the medieval heart. Others built homes where there were once fields. They didn't arrive as victims, but as pioneers. For them, Amsterdam was a blank canvas, a promise, an opportunity they didn't intend to waste. It was there, among the new streets and old canals, that a culture of risk, of innovation, of ambition without limits was born, not by inheritance nor by nobility, but out of necessity. And so the refugees from Antwerp lit the spark that would ignite the fire of modern capitalism. With maps on the table, calculations on parchment, and courage as their only insurance, the merchants of Amsterdam came up with a plan, a secret expedition, bold, irreversible. It wasn't about just imagining possibilities anymore. It was time to jump into the unknown. With the support of expert mapmakers and sailors, they started the Company of Far Lands. The Company of Far Lands. And they sent a young man named Cornelius de Houtman on a secret mission to Lisbon to spy on the big players in the Portuguese market. The chosen one to lead the expedition, Houtman himself, with no sailing experience but with a hunger for glory. The total investment was huge, 300,000 florins, an unthinkable fortune for just one merchant. But here, many people put in their own money, not just because they were ambitious, but because they believed in something bigger. 3 ships were prepared, with 249 men on board. None of them had ever sailed so far. No one knew if they would come back. And the journey, it was a nightmare. Scurvy, rebellions, months stuck in Madagascar, and finally, Java. where they were met not with a welcome, but with prison. Houtman managed to escape, and on August 14, 1597, he returned to Amsterdam. Those who stepped off the ships were barely 80 walking skeletons with a handful of pepper sacks in their arms. A failure in the eyes of many, but not for those who had invested. They had arrived, they had returned, and they had brought spices. They had shown that the Portuguese could be defeated. Now Amsterdam needed more ships, a lot more, and so a spark of mechanical genius ignited. An inventor and miller named Cornelis Corneliszun introduced a simple but game-changing piece, the crankshaft. It changed the circular motion of the windmill into up and down motion, and with it saws could cut planks 30 times faster. Shipbuilding was changed forever. Even though there was pushback from traditional craftspeople, the change couldn't be stopped. The Netherlands had just gotten its final advantage. Amsterdam became Europe's biggest shipyard, and it started building, non-stop, the best merchant ship of the 17th century. The dream was no longer crazy, it was an industry. The birth of modern capitalism, the VOC. The next 5 years were pure excitement. Ships left one after another for Asia. 75 trips crossed the oceans. And when they came back, full of pepper, cinnamon and cloves, the church bells rang like a king had been born. Amsterdam wasn't just a city anymore, it was amazing. The numbers were huge. 9 million florins brought back. A fortune like all the money the Netherlands owed from its war against Spain. But success brought a new problem, internal competition. There were too many companies, too many different prices, too many arguments, and so the most radical idea yet was born. A unified company, centralized, armed, with absolute power over Asian trade. In April of 1602, the VOC, Verenigde Oostindische Compagnie, the Dutch East India Company, was born. A makeshift office in Dirk van Oss's house was its first headquarters. And something totally new happened. Anyone could invest. 1,143 people did just that. Merchants, carpenters, blacksmiths, weavers, even 7 housewives. It was the first sign of a society where everyone could share in the collective wealth. 6,680,000 Dutch guilders were collected, a huge amount of money. But there was a catch. The money wouldn't be given back after each trip. It would stay invested for 10 years. For many small investors, this was a problem. How could they get their money back if they needed to sell their share sooner? The answer didn't come from the fancy big halls, but from an old bridge close to the harbour. There, buyers and sellers started trading VOC shares in a casual way, and when it rained, they went into an abandoned church, St. Olaf's, which accidentally became the world's first stock market. Deals were made official at the VOC headquarters. That building still stands today and is part of the University of Amsterdam. That's where the idea of the modern corporation was born. As stock trading grew, they decided to build an official place for it. In 1611, the Amsterdam Stock Exchange, designed by Hendrik de Keyser, opened right in the heart of the city. Unlike the London Stock Exchange, where only goods were traded, in Amsterdam they traded stocks. It was the world's first stock exchange, and the city just exploded. In just 30 years, 10 square kilometers of canals were dug, 100 bridges were built, and 3,000 houses went up. The population grew from 30,000 to over 100,000. Amsterdam became the 3rd largest city in Europe, a city built not by kings, but by merchants. While Amsterdam and London were building their trade empires, another economic debate was coming up, though it wasn't called that yet. How to organize wealth and work for the common good. Capitalism, born from private effort and individual risk, argued that the freedom to invest, innovate and trade was the driving force of progress. On the other hand, socialist ideas, which would start to take shape centuries later, suggested central planning and shared ownership to avoid unfairness. So why did the capitalist model take over the world? Because in practice, capitalism proved to be an unstoppable engine of innovation and growth. The chance to invest in companies like the VOC allowed large sums of money to be raised, which funded voyages, technologies, and new trade routes. Someone could risk their money, hoping not only for profits but also for general progress. Also, the market encouraged competition and efficiency. Constant improvements in shipbuilding, trade and finance led to lower costs, faster exchanges and the creation of jobs. On the other hand, models based on shared ownership or state control, even with good intentions, struggle to quickly meet market needs and to encourage individual creativity. Not that capitalism is perfect or without problems, but its ability to change and grow in different situations has made it the main way economies work. Today, when we look at our global and tech-filled world, it's easy to forget that it all started in Amsterdam in the 1500s with regular people and their dreams of spices and faraway trade routes. Capitalism made those dreams come true. Capitalism isn't just an economic system, it's a way of thinking that pushes people to create and build. Every invention, every ship, every successful business comes from the drive, risk and hard work of people trying to make things better. On the other hand, socialist or communist systems, even though they start with good intentions of fairness and equality, often end up relying on the hard work and cleverness of those who operate under capitalist or older systems. While capitalism rewards hard work and new ideas, these other systems often try to share what's already there without creating anything new. That's why throughout history, capitalist societies have made big leaps in technology, grown their economies, and improved people's lives because they encourage effort and healthy competition. But when the economy is controlled too much by one central power, or when private ownership is taken away, the desire to create new things goes down. It's not just about money, but about the freedom to create, make mistakes, and try again. History is full of examples where capitalism was the foundation for building trade empires, thriving cities, and scientific progress. Meanwhile, systems that tried to control everything from the top, leaving no room for individual initiative, ran into stagnation, scarcity, and a lack of progress. So capitalism reveals itself not just as an economic model, but as a fundamental engine for human development and the expansion of possibilities. London rises. While Amsterdam was weaving its empire across the North Sea, a city with its own ambitions began to awaken. London. Its secret lay in a thread that connected the past and the future. 2 centuries earlier, the Black Death had devastated England, cutting its population in half. But from tragedy came opportunity. With fewer people and more land available, the economy changed. They went from farming to raising sheep, and with that, the production of wool. This wool wasn't just a simple product to export. The real business was in turning it into fabric, in adding value to it. In the mid-17th century, London took a big step. It invited Dutch weavers and French Huguenots, refugees like those in Amsterdam, to settle in the English capital. They settled in the east, near the port, building houses with big windows in their attics for their looms. There, among threads and shuttles, the core of the future East End was born. The Port of London began to pulse with life. Its activity increased tenfold. In just 50 years, the population doubled, from 250,000 to 500,000 people. The medieval city stretched westward, moving towards Westminster, while its heart filled with trade, noise, and promise. But London was also a city of contrasts, for many a place of sickness, vice, and crime. See, King Charles I dreamed of a grand city, a symbol of royal power. In Whitehall Palace, the banqueting house was his refuge, a beautiful building designed to impress. But the monarchy faced a harsh truth. They weren't in charge alone. Parliament and the City Council had a voice and power. The fight for control of the city led to civil war. Charles was captured, put on trial and beheaded in 1649, right in front of the same banqueting house that had inspired his glory. In just 50 years, London transformed from a trading hub into a financial powerhouse. The war for control of the sea routes between Amsterdam and London was about to begin, and the world watched anxiously. London's growing strength not only inspired admiration, but also anxiety. For many, the city was a dark place, a hotbed of disease, crime, and vice. In his palace at Whitehall, King Charles I dreamed of making London a city fit for a king. The banqueting house, his architectural jewel, symbolized that dream. But the truth was different. Unlike other European monarchies, the king's power in England was limited. Parliament and the city government had real control over the city. This clash of powers led to a civil war that ruined the country. On January 30th, 1649, Charles I was defeated, found guilty, and had his head cut off in front of the very banqueting house he had built. A historic moment that marked the end of an era. But from that chaos, something unexpected emerged. The consolidation of economic power in London. With the monarchy weakened, the financial sector became more formal. Before, deals were made informally in taverns. Now, the first banking institutions were being created. A few months after the execution, Oliver Cromwell allowed the Jews to return to England. Bankers from Lombardy, Italy, arrived and set up their offices in what we now know as Lombard Street. These offices became the city's first business blocks. Interestingly, they kept an old tradition. Hanging signs similar to those on pubs, which acted as the world's first logos. Today, those signs still decorate Lombard Street, reminding us of the visual beginnings of company identity. In just 50 years, London changed from a trading centre to the financial capital of the emerging world. The rivalry with Amsterdam for control of the sea routes became unavoidable. Two cities, two ways of seeing the world, sire, and the future of global trade was on the line. So through dreams, wars and revolutions, the foundations of the modern world were laid. Amsterdam and London didn't just build empires, they gave birth to ideas that still shape our economy and society today. Have you ever wondered what would have happened if those merchants had failed? Or if the crankshaft technology had never existed? How do you think the world would be if stock exchanges had never come to be? In a world where everything seems so global and connected, these stories remind us that big changes come from brave decisions, from risks, and from the vision of everyday people. We'd love to hear what you think. Do you know any lesser-known stories that changed the course of history? Do you think we still live by the rules those men created 400 years ago? Share your thoughts with us, because in Stories of Wonder, every voice adds to the tale. If this journey into the early days of capitalism and the history that changed the world has fascinated you, subscribe and join us for upcoming episodes. Here, the incredible is just the beginning.